The sound of crashing metal echoed across the set. Crew members froze, their hearts racing as the director who had poured years of his life into bringing The Chosen to the world was suddenly at the center of a terrifying accident. One moment it was just another day of filming, filled with long hours and creative energy. The next, panic swept through the crew as they realized Dallas Jenkins, the man leading the entire project, was in serious danger. The Chosen is not just a television series. It is a movement that has captured the attention of millions of people around the world. The show brings to life the story of Jesus and his followers in a way that feels both human and powerful. Its success has broken barriers, becoming the first multi-season series about the life of Christ, funded largely by devoted fans. Dallas Jenkins, the director and creator, is the visionary behind this groundbreaking project. His determination and storytelling ability have made The Chosen more than entertainment. It has become a source of hope and faith for viewers everywhere. On set, Dallas is not simply a director calling the shots. He is deeply involved in every detail, from guiding actors to shaping the emotional tone of each scene. Cast and crew often describe his leadership as a combination of passion and relentless hard work. But with that dedication also comes long days, unpredictable challenges, and moments when everything feels like it is balancing on a thin line. The set of The Chosen is not an ordinary workplace. It is alive with heavy lights, towering cameras, moving props, and dozens of people working in unison. While the team works tirelessly to make every scene perfect, the risks are always there, hidden behind the beauty of the final product that viewers see on screen. Dallas is known for his willingness to push through difficulties to achieve the highest quality for his audience. Those who work with him say he often sacrifices sleep and comfort, driving himself and his team to deliver something extraordinary. This level of devotion builds an atmosphere where every shot matters, every detail is checked twice, and every moment on set feels like it carries weight. Yet in the middle of such determination, it only takes a split second for something unexpected to change everything. And that is exactly what happened during one shocking day of filming. The accident was not planned, it was not rehearsed, and it was not part of the script. In fact, it was the very last thing anyone expected to happen to the person who held the vision of the entire series in his hands. While Dallas Jenkins is a figure admired and respected by many, on that day he became vulnerable in a way no one could ignore. The crew that usually looked to him for guidance suddenly found themselves rushing to protect him. The air of inspiration and teamwork on set was replaced by fear. The kind of fear that reminds everyone that no amount of planning can prevent every danger. The story of what happened is more than just an accident. It is a reminder of the fragile balance between passion and risk, creativity and safety, faith and fear. To understand how shocking this moment truly was, you first need to see the man behind the project, the world he has built, and the relentless pace that brought both glory and danger to the set of The Chosen. The day began like so many others on the set of The Chosen. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow across the outdoor set that had been carefully built to bring the ancient world to life. Crew members moved quickly but quietly, adjusting props, securing lights, and preparing for another long day of shooting. Cameras rested on their heavy stands, wires stretched across the ground like veins carrying power to every corner of the set, and extras in costume rehearsed their steps in the background. To the audience watching the finished episodes, it all looks seamless, almost magical. But behind the camera, every scene takes hours of planning, dozens of people, and equipment that can weigh more than a person. Dallas Jenkins was there, as he always was, walking the set with his familiar mixture of focus and energy. He checked details, gave instructions, and encouraged the cast with his steady voice. For Dallas, each filming day carried both pressure and pride. Pressure, because every delay cost time and money, and pride, because he believed the story being told was bigger than himself. To the crew, his presence was reassuring. He was the one who carried the vision, and even in moments of exhaustion, he refused to step back. But the set that morning held a hidden tension. Equipment was being shifted into place for a demanding scene, one that required precision and timing. Massive lights had been raised high above the actors to capture the perfect angle of natural sunlight, mixing with the artificial glow. Cameras were mounted and ready to roll, and sound crews adjusted microphones to catch even the quietest dialogue. It was the kind of setup that left little room for error. The crew had done this countless times before, but film sets are unpredictable places. A single mistake, a moment of distraction, or a small piece of equipment not secured properly can turn into something dangerous in an instant. The actors rehearsed in silence while technicians worked behind the scenes. Every clang of metal and hum of machinery filled the air. To most people, the set looked like a place of controlled chaos. But to those who had worked there day after day, it was second nature. Dallas, however, understood the risks more than anyone. He often reminded the team to stay alert, to respect the weight of the tools and the fragility of the human body. Yet on that morning, with so much focus placed on creating the perfect scene, no one noticed the danger slowly building just a few feet away. It started as a small adjustment, the kind that happens dozens of times during filming. A crew member shifted equipment into place, securing a light stand that towered overhead. But whether it was the uneven ground, the weight of the gear, or a slight miscalculation, the balance was fragile. Those nearby may have sensed something off, a faint wobble in the metal, but their attention was already pulled toward other details. Dallas himself, absorbed in conversation with the cinematographer, didn't notice. The set was busy, the energy was high, and time was pressing. No one could imagine how quickly that calm rhythm of preparation would break into chaos. In those moments, the stage was set not only for a powerful scene in the show, but also for a terrifying event that no script could have predicted. The people closest to Dallas would later recall the eerie stillness, the way the ordinary sounds of the set, footsteps, voices, clattering tools, seemed to vanish just seconds before everything changed. What had begun as a normal day of filming was about to be remembered as one of the scariest days the chosen crew would ever experience. The moment came without warning. 1 second, the set was buzzing with the controlled rhythm of production, and the next, it was disrupted by a sound that cut through everything. A sharp metallic groan echoed above the crew, the kind of noise that makes the stomach tighten before the mind has even processed what it means. Heads turned instinctively toward the towering light rig that had been standing firm only minutes earlier. Its steel frame trembled, just slightly at first, before tilting in a way that made the danger unmistakable. Dallas was close, too close. He had stepped forward to give notes to one of the actors, his eyes locked on the scene unfolding before the cameras. He had no reason to look up, no reason to suspect that the very equipment meant to bring light to his vision was about to betray him. For those who saw it happen, time seemed to slow. A crew member shouted, the kind of warning cry that comes from pure instinct rather than thought. But the words were swallowed by the sudden crash that followed. The heavy rig lurched forward, its weight pulling against the cables that tried desperately to hold it in place. In that instant, chaos erupted. Actors stumbled back, crew members lunged forward, and the air filled with the deafening clash of metal striking against the ground. The set, once filled with focus and creativity, now pulsed with panic. And at the center of it all was Dallas Jenkins, caught in the path of danger he never saw coming. What happened next would be remembered in fragments by those who were there. Some recall the shattering impact of equipment colliding with props. Others remember the sight of Dallas falling, the director who had always seemed untouchable, suddenly vulnerable and human. A few remember nothing but the noise, so loud and overwhelming that it drowned out even their own thoughts. In those seconds, no one cared about the scene they had been preparing, the cameras waiting to roll, or the schedule they were trying to keep. Every eye was locked on Dallas, and every heart carried the same fear, that this accident could end everything. Crew members rushed to his side, their movements frantic but fueled by adrenaline. Someone called for medics, their voice trembling as they tried to stay calm. Others pushed aside equipment, clearing space, desperate to reach the man lying motionless on the floor. For those who looked on, it was surreal. This was not part of the story they had come to tell, not something that could be edited out or reshot. This was real. Dallas stirred, but weakly. His hand twitched as though trying to push himself up, but the weight of shock and pain held him down. Gasps swept through the crew. Relief mingled with terror as they realized he was alive but injured. The seconds dragged, every moment stretching into an eternity as they waited for medical help. Even those who had worked with Dallas for years, who had seen him push through exhaustion and setbacks, had never seen him like this. Vulnerable, silent, and at the mercy of the chaos around him. The accident lasted no more than a few moments, but for everyone present, it felt endless. It was not just the fall of equipment or the injury of a director. It was the collapse of the invisible shield that many had believed surrounded the project. The Chosen had faced challenges before, but this was different. This was not financial stress or scheduling delays. This was a direct blow to the very person who carried the weight of the entire vision. And as the dust settled, and the silence returned after the chaos, one truth became clear to everyone. Nothing about that day would ever be forgotten. Silence fell for a split second after the crash, a silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the entire set. It was the kind of silence that doesn't bring peace, but dread. Then, all at once, sound returned in a flood. Shouts filled the air. Feet pounded against the ground as crew members rushed forward. Radios crackled with panicked voices calling for help. The set, which only moments earlier had been filled with the controlled hum of filmmaking, now pulsed with raw fear. Dallas lay on the ground, his body partly shielded by those who had reached him first. He was breathing, but shallowly, his face pale from the shock of impact. A camera operator dropped his gear and ran over, kneeling at his side, his hands shaking as he tried to keep Dallas still. Another crew member tore off his jacket and rolled it into a cushion, sliding it carefully under Dallas's head. People moved with urgency, but beneath every action was hesitation. No one wanted to cause more harm, yet no one could bear to stand still. A cluster formed around him. Some crew members crouched low, speaking his name over and over, hoping their voices would anchor him. Others stood at the edges of the circle, their eyes darting between the fallen equipment and the man they had all looked up to. The actors, still in costume, hovered nearby in shock, unsure whether to step forward or stay back. The line between fiction and reality had vanished, and now every face reflected the same truth. This was no scene. This was their director, their leader, their friend, fighting to hold on. Someone ran to the production van to grab the first aid kit. Another sprinted across the lot to flag down emergency responders. Phones buzzed, calls were made, and the normally seamless rhythm of set communication now dissolved into frantic, overlapping voices. Every second dragged, stretched thin by fear. Crew members who had always prided themselves on their calm professionalism felt their hands tremble. Even the strongest among them could not mask the horror in their eyes. Dallas stirred again, his lips parted as if to speak, but only a faint sound escaped. It was enough to bring tears to the eyes of those closest to him. One of the assistant directors gripped his hand tightly, whispering words of reassurance, promising that help was coming. The intensity of the moment was overwhelming. It felt as though the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for a sign that he would be all right. The medical team finally arrived, weaving through the maze of equipment and people. Their uniforms and calm voices cut through the panic. They knelt by Dallas, asking quick, practiced questions, checking his breathing, his pulse, his responsiveness. The crew gave way, forming a wide circle, their faces tense with unspoken prayers. For the first time in the history of the show, the cameras were forgotten. No one thought about filming, continuity, or schedules. Every ounce of attention was fixed on one man lying on the ground. The stretcher was prepared, and the medics worked quickly to stabilize him. As they carefully lifted Dallas, the reality sank in deeper. The person who had guided them through every challenge, the one who carried the vision of the entire project, was now being carried himself. Crew members exchanged looks, some with eyes red from holding back tears, others staring blankly, as if unable to process what they were seeing. The set that had once been a place of inspiration and faith now felt like a fragile world that could collapse at any moment. When the ambulance doors closed with Dallas inside, a hush swept across the lot. People stood in place, frozen, as the sirens wailed in the distance. The heart of their production had been taken away, and no one knew what the next hour, let alone the next day, would bring. The aftermath of the accident was not just about physical injury. It was about the collective wound left on everyone who had seen the unthinkable happen right before their eyes. The hospital room was nothing like a film set. There were no cameras, no rehearsed lines, no carefully staged lighting. Just the steady rhythm of machines, the faint buzz of fluorescent bulbs, and the quiet murmur of doctors discussing his condition. For Dallas Jenkins, lying in a hospital bed after the terrifying accident, everything felt unreal. Hours earlier, he had been directing a scene for The Chosen, moving through the world he had worked so hard to create. Now he was the one being observed, the one others were watching anxiously, waiting for signs of strength. At first, Dallas said very little. His body ached, his breathing came shallow, and the weight of what had happened pressed heavily on him. But as the initial shock wore off, the same determination that had carried him through countless challenges began to surface. Those who visited him recall the moment he tried to sit up despite the pain, insisting that he needed to know what was happening on set. Even injured, his first thought was not about himself, but about the project, the cast, and the crew who looked to him for guidance. The doctors urged rest, reminding him that recovery could not be rushed. Yet Dallas was never one to accept limits easily. His family stood by his side, their presence grounding him, reminding him that his health was worth more than any production deadline. Slowly, as the hours turned into days, he began to speak more about the accident. He admitted the fear he felt when he realized he could not move, the helplessness of lying on the ground surrounded by panicked faces. But he also spoke of gratitude. Gratitude that it had not been worse. Gratitude for the quick actions of his crew. Gratitude for the prayers that poured in from fans around the world as news of the accident spread. When Dallas finally addressed his supporters, his words carried both vulnerability and strength. He acknowledged the reality of what had happened without dramatizing it, focusing instead on the resilience that came after. He shared that accidents, no matter how frightening, were reminders of how fragile life can be and how important it is to remain grounded in faith. His message was not about fear, but about perspective. For him, the accident became more than just a setback. It became a moment of clarity, a reminder that the mission of The Chosen was never about perfection, but about impact. His return to set was quiet, but powerful. When he stepped back among the cameras, still moving carefully, the entire crew paused. For weeks they had replayed the image of him lying helpless on the ground. Now they watched him stand again, not unshaken, but stronger in spirit. Dallas addressed the team with simple words. "We keep going." That short sentence reignited the energy of the production. It was not just an instruction. It was a declaration that no accident, no setback, could break the vision they were building together. From that moment, the set felt different. The crew carried a renewed sense of caution, yes, but also a deeper sense of unity. They knew they had nearly lost the person who held their project together, and seeing him return reminded them why they were there in the first place. Dallas had faced the kind of moment that could have ended everything, but instead, he turned it into a testimony of perseverance. His recovery was not just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, and communal. It showed everyone that even in the face of fear, faith, and determination, could light the path forward. The accident left an invisible mark on the set of The Chosen. Long after Dallas was taken to the hospital and the equipment was cleared away, the memory lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. When the crew returned to work, nothing looked the same. The cameras still stood where they always had, the lights still cast their glow, the actors still rehearsed their lines, but an unspoken weight hung in the air. Every sound seemed sharper, every movement more cautious. The set that once thrived on creative energy now carried a fragile awareness that things could go wrong at any moment. For the cast, the image of their director lying on the ground replayed in their thoughts. They were used to seeing him full of energy, guiding them through difficult scenes with confidence. To see him vulnerable had shaken them deeply. Some admitted later that it felt like the heartbeat of the production had stopped for those terrifying minutes. When Dallas returned, still recovering but determined, the actors felt a new responsibility. They weren't just performing lines anymore. They were carrying forward the vision of someone who had risked everything, including his own well-being, to tell a story that mattered. Among the crew, the accident became a wake-up call. Film sets are places where long hours and tight schedules often push people to their limits. Safety rules are followed, but the pressure to move fast can sometimes blur the lines. After Dallas's fall, no one looked at the equipment the same way again. Every cable was checked twice, every light secured more firmly, every movement rehearsed with added care. It was as if the accident had forced everyone to slow down and remember that behind every shot, there were human lives at stake. But beyond the fear, something else grew: unity. The crew spoke more openly, sharing their concerns without hesitation. Actors and technicians who once stayed in separate corners of the set now mingled more, checking in on one another. People prayed together, not just for Dallas's recovery, but for strength as a team. The show had always been about faith, but now the production itself became a living reflection of that message. They had faced a moment of chaos and fear, and they had come out of it more bonded than before. Dallas noticed it too. When he returned, he could see the change in their eyes. The cast no longer looked at him only as their director, but as someone they had nearly lost and refused to take for granted again. The crew worked with more patience, more precision, but also more heart. Every scene carried a deeper meaning. The accident had reminded them all that The Chosen wasn't just a show, it was a mission, and every person on set played a vital role in making it happen. In interviews later, some of the cast members described the incident as a turning point. It forced them to confront their own fears, but it also reminded them of the resilience of their leader. The project felt less like a job and more like a calling. Each day on set after that was treated as a gift. Fragile, fleeting, but incredibly important. What could have broken them instead made them stronger, and in that strength, the spirit of The Chosen became even more real. The day of Dallas Jenkins' accident will always remain etched into the memory of the Chosen family. It was a day that began with creativity and focus, but ended in chaos and fear. Yet from that fear, something powerful was born. The accident was frightening, yes, but it was also clarifying. It reminded everyone, cast, crew, and even fans around the world, that behind the cameras, behind the costumes, behind the stories being told, there are real people who carry both passion and vulnerability. Dallas's recovery was more than a physical healing. It was a statement that resilience and faith can carry a person through even the darkest moments. When he returned to set, his words were simple but unforgettable. "We keep going." That message carried weight not just because it came from a director, but because it came from someone who had lived through a moment that could have ended everything. His return wasn't just about resuming production. It was about proving that the vision of The Chosen was stronger than fear, stronger than setbacks, and stronger than any obstacle. For the cast and crew, the accident reshaped the way they saw their work. Each scene was no longer just a line in a script or a shot in a schedule. It was a piece of something larger, something sacred. The accident reminded them to slow down, to care for each other, and to recognize that the story they were telling was mirrored in their own lives. A story of struggle, faith, and perseverance. For the audience, hearing about what happened to Dallas was both shocking and inspiring. Fans who had followed the journey of The Chosen from its beginning were quick to send prayers, support, and words of encouragement. What might have been just another behind-the-scenes challenge instead became a testimony that spread far beyond the set. It showed that even when the leader of a project falls, what truly matters is the strength to rise again. In the end, the accident did not stop The Chosen. If anything, It gave the series a deeper authenticity. The themes of hope, sacrifice, and faith that are so central to the show were lived out in real life through Dallas and his team. What was once just a terrifying moment is now part of a larger story. A reminder that behind every powerful piece of art are people who are willing to endure hardship for the sake of something greater than themselves. As the cameras roll once again, and The Chosen continues to inspire millions around the world. The memory of that day lingers not as a shadow but as a spark that fuels gratitude, unity, and determination. A spark that reminds everyone involved that life is fragile, but purpose is strong. And a spark that proves that sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most unforgettable stories. So the question remains for everyone watching. When faced with fear and setback, do we stop? Or do we, like Dallas Jenkins, choose to keep going?